Generous support for this program has been provided by these sponsors.
Honestly, what I expected out of today was just to get comfortable with the set and kind of meet all the folks around here and just kind of get used to what it's going to be like tomorrow.
I was expecting to just be with me and my coach, Miss Curvin, and standing there giving my speech over and over again.
Truly, it got me out of my comfort zone because I would have never did anything like this, and I'll probably end up speaking at like my graduation.
Well, tomorrow, I hope that I will have the confidence in myself to be able to deliver the speech that I wrote.
My expectations for myself is to perform to my best ability and really convey to the audience what I want to convey through my speech.
Well, tomorrow I expect to win, but I'm definitely going to stay calm, practice throughout tonight, and make sure I have everything down and be prepared for tomorrow. And I hope that I do well, I meet some really awesome people, and I do a great job.
We are privileged to have two outstanding community celebrities serve as MCs for tonight's program. Please welcome Mary Bear, news anchor for WJCT-TV, and Jack O'Brien from 1010XL Sport Radio. I turn the podium over to you. Welcome.
Richard, thank you so much. You know what? I have served as MC, co-MC for this event for a number of years. I don't remember how many. It's been so many. But every year, I'm amazed at the content and the energy that these young people bring to the stage here.
Absolutely, and this event has been so popular. We started several years ago at a different venue, and I believe this is our third year here. Les, is that correct? The folks at WJCT have been absolutely terrific, and we appreciate their support. I'd like to introduce at this time our Rotary Oratory Competition Committee Chairman to explain how this competition is conducted. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome Leslie Redd. Leslie?
After 5 very successful regional contests, we're down to the final 5 contestants for our speech competition. I'd like to fill you in on how we got here. We invited public and private high schools throughout the 5 First Coast counties to participate in our oratory competition. We presented them with this year's speech topic and asked that they research, write, and create a presentation to qualify for our project. Out of the invited schools, we had 20 participants. They were divided up geographically into 5 regionals: the Rotary Club of Amelia Island Sunrise, the Rotary Club of Jacksonville, the Rotary Club of Orange Park, the Rotary Club of St. Augustine, and the Rotary Club of West Jacksonville. Each regional winner was awarded $500 and the opportunity to compete in tonight's finals. Tonight, the winner of our competition will receive a total of a $5,000 college scholarship. The second place winner will receive a total of a $3,000 scholarship, and the remaining finalists will receive $500 in addition to their $500 regional winnings, for a total of $1,000. So to each of our finalists, the best of luck.
I love reading, and a lot of the stuff that I write about is about what I read or influenced off of that. Especially this speech, Fahrenheit 451, I remember, was one of 3 options for book choices that I wanted. One was Lord of the Flies, and then one was The Book Thief, which were all like very big books that were controversial, but we learned it in class. And so I feel like Fahrenheit 451 was one of those books that were just, it couldn't be silenced, it couldn't be censored, and it was the perfect thing to write for my speech. I remember in middle school just was the most challenging for me. My grades weren't as good, and I really didn't have a very good mental health at the time. There were a lot of things happening, family issues, and I remember just not thinking that I could do it at all. And especially having that musical theater, that love for musical theater, it was like very demotivating at the time. I felt like I was always sitting in my bed and always struggling to get up in the morning and just kind of collect my thoughts. But now, where I am, I feel like my most recent accomplishment is this Rotary competition, just being able to win that first round and being in scholastics, getting a gold key. I think for my artwork to be more recognized now that I've put it out and found the courage to find a different outlet, I've been really proud of myself for setting those goals and just being on top of everything finally, and being patient with myself after years of just having this internal battle inside my head.
Now, we've invited a panel of distinguished professional judges who will decide tonight's winner.
We've covered all the specifics. It's now time to hear the speeches. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the topic that our speakers will be conversing on this evening. And it's a little in-depth and it's very deep, so bear with me. In consideration of Rotary International's 2021-2022 theme, Serve to Change Lives, we've asked our speakers to select a written document, for example, a book, a pamphlet, a magazine, literature, perhaps a proclamation. Select a written document that they believe has made a major impact on society at some point in history, and verbally present their reasons, supported by how it has impacted them, along with documented facts, actual results from the written piece, and recorded public opinions. We've asked our speakers to draw lots to be fair and square for the speaking order, and Mary Bear will introduce speaker number one, and good luck.
Thank you, Jack. Speaker number one is the Jacksonville regional winner. It's Rachel Florendo Salvador from the Douglas Anderson School of the Arts from London. This young woman is an aspiring interior architect, a singer, and a dancer, we're told. Let's listen in.
When I was first assigned to read Fahrenheit 451 in 7th grade, I didn't really know much about it. As far as I knew, it was a story that featured one of the most powerful and anxiety-inducing events to the avid reader: burning books, inspired and influenced from the events that occurred in Nazi Germany. Heaps of knowledge thrown to a fire, fueled by python spitting kerosene. Societal themes represented in the book would go on to shape my perception of media consumption and how, through public response, the attempts to censor the book actually spotlight Bradbury's intended purpose. Inspired by contemporary politics, Bradbury uses his protagonist, Montag, to challenge the traditional authority and ideas present in the 1950s America. As such, the novel sparked much controversy in the country as it made its way into the academic environment. Petitions against the novel incited in 2007 in the city of Conroe, Texas's independent school district. It faced a trial as infuriated parents expressed their contempt for the content situated within the story. This preceded a bigger case, gaining negative traction from the public, leading to the novel nearly being banned in 2018 due to a student-led petition for the lack of censorship. A major irony of this attempt to respond to what is perceived as vulgar content is that it fully aligns with the author's message about society. You could go as far as to say it even empowers it. Attempts to censor the book's content is a success to what Ray Bradbury wanted us to know: that humanity may try to shield itself from trauma and devastation, but reality will seep its way in one way or another. Montag's critical thinking is suppressed numerous times in the novel by none other than the head of a department that won authority in his life. That same fire department endorsed the burning of any challenging art or literature. And Bradbury held ground with the message that ideas that challenge traditional way of thought is something that should be welcomed, not shied away from. From a more personal standpoint, there's an appreciation for the colorful, fruitful language that Bradbury uses to push that message to divert from uniformity. It's truly fascinating how many different variants of society versus self there can be with the innovation of an artist. What I think people fail to understand is that the orientation of the world is not a glorification, nor does it condone actions within the text. In fact, to be able to place yourself in a perspective where you can experience this grief and exposure to violence, you can more easily empathize with the thematic intent. You see the intentions why characters commit to actions that can be up for debate. The moral rights and wrongs begin to look like a spectrum and should not heed to understanding. I found myself enjoying these interpretations of media, and a lot more once I could breathe the exhilarating danger and expect the pending doom left between lines of interpretation. Fahrenheit 451's impact goes beyond the time it was written and expands into the 21st century in ways that can influence an entire nation's worth of understanding how information is perceived. New ideas can terrify to the point of denial or can consume one into the point of losing oneself. Bradbury cautions they are not to be taken to either extreme, but to be thought of critically. Authority should not always be blindly obeyed, but sometimes challenged in order to reach enlightenment. These themes are especially relevant to the times that we live in, as there are big, new, exciting ideas around every corner. As controversial a topic can be, it encourages the development of critical thinking, the answers to many what if and how does questions. I encourage you, as a reader, a listener, a thinker, to challenge this culture of censorship. Take a chance with Fahrenheit 451.
When I first heard about the competition, I was actually called to Miss Vandelinder's room, who was my speech and debate instructor, and she was like, "Hey, Nick, I think you should do this. You have a really good voice, and I think that you'll do a really good job with it." And I'm like, okay, I'll keep it in mind. And when I got back to the other room where I came from, I looked at the paper that had it, and I saw the prompt, and I'm like, I know a great book for this, and I think that I'd enjoy doing it. And after that, I just typed up a rough draft of what the speech would be, and I gave it to Miss Vandelinder, and she was like, that is a good one. I think we should run on that. And ever since then, we've been practicing, training, and just getting me ready for tomorrow, really. In like 4th or 5th grade, I had the luxury of being able to go to somewhere called the White Oak Conservation Center, which is like really close to the border of Florida and Georgia. And there they house exotic animals and stuff that are endangered and help basically spread awareness of them while keeping scientific information. And I found that place super fascinating. And ever since my visit there, I've always been captivated with animals and our environment and how not only we affect it, but also we try and help fix some of the mistakes we made in the past. And so in my research from basically our environment and all of the beautiful animals of this planet, I ran into the book Silent Spring. And when I read it, it definitely taught me a lot about history and some of the mistakes we've made, but also how as humanity we acknowledge those mistakes and we kind of set forth a new path to make them right. And after reading that, I knew that it fit perfectly with this, and I'm passionate about it. Well, I hope to go to college. My dream college would be the University of Florida, but in the future, if I do get into UF or any other colleges, I want to go there to study animal sciences and biology, and then from there go study at graduate school for veterinary medicine, and hopefully become a veterinarian in my future. Yeah, it was the summer of my 9th grade year, and I was going out to summer practice for soccer when I was still playing soccer, and right before practice, I went and swung at the ball, and I ended up twisting just like the wrong way, and I ended up breaking my knee, just like right below the knee, and it had left me in a full leg cast for about 2 or 3 months, and then I was going to physical therapy for another 2 after, and I think that event in my life really opened up kind of like this mentality about just keeping on pushing through. No matter how hard a time might be, there's always going to be a brighter side behind it, and just to find the goals that I really enjoy and just put my mind to them, because with enough work and effort, I will definitely get there. I just have to put that effort in and not let anything hold me back. I'm going to be honest, a couple years ago, I was definitely in your guys' boat. Going up in front of a crowd was not something that I really wanted to do, but just being willing to do it, trying new things, and just going up there and experiencing it, because you're always going to be your hardest critic. And once you learn to accept your own criticism and morph it and turn it into something that you can build off of, you'll realize that you're only going to build from there. And even though you might be scared now, that basically scared will turn into courage, and you will learn that it's not as bad, and that just over time you will become a really good speaker if you put your mind to it and you just go with it. It's awesome how you can grow.
Our second speaker is the Nassau County Regional winner. He's from Yulee High School. He's the president of the Beta Club and the president of the Great Decision Club. He aspires to be a veterinarian at the University of Florida, the Nassau County Regional winner. Ladies and gentlemen, from Yulee High, please welcome Nicholas Emerson.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to follow me into the past. The year is 1952. And the location is the small town of Bellington. Bellington is a classic town of the 1950s, with a centralized downtown area with sprawling farms surrounding it, stretching into the distance. It's not difficult to find beauty in the surrounding nature of this town. Deer roamed the hills, and birds chirped endlessly. But then a strange blight swept across the town. Cattle began to die, and children grew sick. The birds seemed to disappear, leaving nothing but silence in their wake. There were no bees to be found, so all of the vegetation started withering and losing its color, leaving the town as a shell of its former glory. Now, the scene I just described to you is very similar to the one that Rachel Carson used to begin her book, Silent Spring. Selling more than 2 million copies, Silent Spring had a tremendous impact on society by reforming the way we use pesticides like DDT and creating the environmental and ecological views that still exist to this day, fighting for a healthier world and a safer planet. In Silent Spring, Rachel Carson set out to describe the harmful effects of the pesticide DDT. When it was used commercially, DDT didn't just affect bugs like it was intended to. Scientists were finding the chemical across entire ecosystems that they studied, and it was affecting all kinds of organisms in detrimental ways. For example, one of the events that was discussed in Silent Spring was the story of the robin. At Michigan State University, students and their professors were originally able to report well over 300 robins in any given year. But in the matter of just a few years, they could barely find a single adolescent robin. It didn't take long for scientists to tie a connection between the rapid decrease in the robin population and the use of DDT. As it turns out, studies found that there were high quantities of DDT being stored in the reproductive organs of the robin, and this was causing them to either produce eggs that would never hatch or not produce eggs at all. But robins weren't the only animals being affected. There were many others, like fish, squirrel, deer, and even humans that were all experiencing the toxic effects of DDT. The harmful chemical would secretly store itself in any living organism that it interacted with. And that harmful fact was put into the center of the spotlight by Silent Spring. The warnings and emotions that were emphasized by Rachel Carson created a new discussion in the scientific community. After World War II, science was seen as a miracle, and many thought that scientific innovation had no side effects. But Rachel Carson proved this wrong in Silent Spring. In the words of Bill McKibben, the author of The End of Nature and one of the first authors to make a compelling case about global warming, says that she was the first to knock some of that shine off of modernity. She was the first to tap into that idea that others started to feel. The effects of Silent Spring are long-lasting. After many years of planning and revising, legislation was finally passed in 1972 that banned the commercial use of DDT here in the United States. Unfortunately, however, this was 8 years after Carson lost her battle with cancer. But Silent Spring's impact doesn't just end with legislation. Arguably, the biggest impact of the book comes in its call to arms. The persuasive words that Rachel Carson wrote helped teach the general population about a world of science that was considered at the time to be too academic or scholarly for the common person. The ideas in Silent Spring would be that spark that was necessary to light the fire that we call the environmental movement. And ever since Silent Spring's release, people have stood by and supported the idea of protecting our environment. Even to this day, that environmental passion that was imbued in so many people has been passed down through the generations to people like me. We have learned to always question how our actions might affect our environment, whether it's harmful pesticides or overhunting, or maybe even carbon emissions. Now we live in a world with thousands of environmental conservation groups and events like the United Nations Climate Summit that happens annually. But even with all of that, I'd like you to consider with me what the world might have looked like today if Silent Spring was never published and we remained blissfully ignorant of our beautiful environment.
Tomorrow night, I'm hoping to get up there and give my speech and to leave those in the audience with something, just thinking about the topics that I'm presenting, and hopefully they recognize my call to action and go and talk to their family members and understand the importance of learning our history. I have known Ms. Curvin since my freshman year of high school. I'm now a senior. I met her through my participation in the National Shakespeare Competition, and slowly she wormed her way so that am now a part of the speech and debate team, which I co-direct this year. And so I've spent a lot of time in her room over the past 4 years, and we've become very close. She's helped me become a significantly stronger speaker, more confident in myself and my abilities, and has helped me and given me so many opportunities, and I could not thank her enough. I knew that I wanted to do something that had a relation to law and government because I'm looking to go into law for my future career. And my grandmother was actually the person who suggested doing a Supreme Court case and then Brown versus Board of Education. And when I stopped to think about it, growing up in the American public school system, that was something that I was exposed to early on, and I didn't really think all that much of it. But as of the last couple of years, I've spent the time trying to, and just like listening to the stories of my grandparents and the things that they've lived through that I can't even imagine having to deal with that. And after losing my paternal grandmother and some other family, and my maternal grandfather, I realized that there are so many stories that everybody has that if I don't take the chance to stop and actually ask them and listen to those experiences that they have, then they'll be lost. And any lessons that they've learned through those experiences will also be lost. So that's how I kind of gained my topic of Brown versus Board of Education, and also tying it into the importance of history and listening to those around us and the experiences that they've gone through so that we can learn from that as we go into the future.
Our third speaker this evening is a senior from the Bowles School. She is the West Jacksonville Regional winner, interested in going into law, and has hobbies of speech and debate. And so this is pretty good for her. Sophia Grace Posick from the Bowles School. Let's welcome her.
It's 1963, and change is coming. At Yorktown High School in Arlington, Virginia, 4 brave students are at the forefront of that change. As the school bell rings in the start of the new year, 1,800 white students flood into the halls to continue their education. But this time, for the first time, they are joined by 4 African American students. In 2022, the civil rights movement is a part of our core school curriculum, but back in 1963, those 4 black children were making history. In 1955, the United States Supreme Court declared segregation in public schools unconstitutional. The landmark ruling and the decision of Brown versus the Board of Education served to change lives by ensuring equal access to education regardless of the color of your skin. Yet, the principle of equality in law stems back to the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States back in 1868. No state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. This amendment was the promise of a better future for all Americans, but a promise that was not fully fulfilled. And next, in the 1896 Supreme Court case, Plessy versus Ferguson, the courts ruled that separate racial facilities were legal if both were equal. However, the different facilities, particularly the educational ones, were not equal. The differences in resources, teachers, and in the buildings themselves segregated the schools. But change was slow to come. This was 59 years after Plessy versus Ferguson and 84 years after the 14th Amendment that segregation in public schools was finally declared unconstitutional. But the importance of Brown versus the Board of Education is its impact on what is considered unconstitutional. It is our society taking a step towards fulfilling that promise that all are created equal, yet, as we can see from the hindsight of history, nothing changed overnight. My grandmother lived through this era of transition and change. She grew up in the shadows of the nation's capital in Arlington in the 1950s, and she was about 8 years old when the ruling was released. Yet, it was 8 years later, as a junior at Yorktown High School, that she first saw change happen. The voices of those who witness history are invaluable towards shaping our understanding of what it was like to live through it. While we can learn from history textbooks and court documents, it is the immediacy and the memories that should never be forgotten. The idea of equality for all people should not be revolutionary, but it was. And the late 50s and 60s forced America to reconsider what she thought was true. Like a slow wave, the Brown versus Board of Education document sparked wave from sea to shining sea. And today, It is difficult to even imagine a time with segregated schools. But what we easily forget is that this was the reality for our country not hundreds of years ago, but in the lifetime of my grandparents' generation. And Brown versus Board of Education was not a solo effort. It was the combination of the life works of people like Thurgood Marshall, the primary lawyer who spent his career fighting for freedom and equality. He heard the people telling him to sit down and accept reality, but he stood up, stood strong, and inspired the country to do the same. Both of my grandmothers were inspired to stand up and challenge stereotypes. My paternal grandmother resisted the expectation of simply going to secretarial school, and despite coming from a poor, rural Georgian background, paved her way as a female accountant and opened her own practice here in Jacksonville. My maternal grandmother became an engineer, even when she had to send out over 70 applications to get one interview. I would not be here on this stage today, or who I am, if they hadn't challenged a world that resisted change. Thurgood Marshall said, "None of us got where we are simply by pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. We got here because somebody bent down and helped us pick up our boots." Both of my grandmothers have always inspired me to pick up my boots and to encourage others to do the same. And the Rotary inspires others to see the change that needs to happen, because in order to serve our communities, we need to learn from our past, listen to our elders, and understand our shared history. So, I challenge you. I challenge you to go and ask your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents even, what issues they faced. Listen to their stories about desegregation, about action, and learn them. My grandmother said it best. You can't always go backward with a what if, but you can go forward. You can't change what was, but you can try to improve and try to learn.
I don't like talking in front of people all that much. I'm quite the nervous wreck.
Tell me about how you got involved in the Rotary competition.
So, my best friend actually was supposed to do it, and it was kind of like last minute, and he couldn't do it because he had college that day. So, instead of my counselor calling me, my counselor called my dad, and my dad actually made me do it. When I did it for my dad, it was the day before the speech. He was getting off of work, and I was like, I need to make this as realistic as I can. So we have 4 dinner kitchen chairs, and I set them up in like our kitchen hallway type thing. It's just like a room, and I set up the 4 chairs, and I went to my room and my dad's room and got pillows and put pillows in the chairs and got pieces of paper and drew faces on the paper and taped it to the pillows and then put hats on the pillows. And then when my dad got home, he sat in the 1 empty chair, so I did my speech to 4 pillows and my dad the day before. This is very like personal. My dad was an alcoholic for I don't even know how long time, since I was like birth to the time we had this talk, and I was like, I don't even know how old I was. I was way too young to be having this talk with my dad, and I don't know how I managed to say this, but I told him he needed to stop drinking, and we're Christians, so I told him he needed to, I don't know where this came from. I told him he needed to put down his bottle, pick up his Bible, and he's been sober for like 7 years. So that story is very personal to me, and if it's like the meaning from it, if I could tell anyone, would be like, if you have someone in your life you care about and you can change their life for the better, even if you like don't think it's gonna have an impact on their life, just like do it anyways. Because little like 10-year-old me didn't think I was gonna stop my father from stop drinking after he's been drinking his whole life, but it worked. So that'd probably be that story.
We are at speaker number 4, a 17-year-old student at Keystone Heights High School, who was just informed on his drive here tonight that he's been accepted at Florida State University. And I think that's terrific. He is the winner of the Clay County region. And again, from Keystone High School, let's please welcome Bryce Cooey. Bryce?
This is now my second time speaking into a microphone. The first time went pretty well, so we'll see how the day goes. I'm still really nervous. I took a public speaking class a couple semesters ago, but it was online, and that does not prepare you for actually speaking in front of people. Also, you see, when my guidance counselor called me about this, I told her no. But my dad had other ideas, and as you can tell, I am now up here. You see, I only had 2 weeks to prepare for this speech originally. My best friend was supposed to do this speech until he had a last-minute scheduling conflict. Looking back, I'm kind of glad he had class that day. But in those 2 weeks, you could imagine how scatterbrained I was, sporadically searching for a document that changed society and shaped the lives of many. Then it hit me like a truck. I could view myself as lesser than all the other participants because I wasn't my school's first choice. I was the fill-in. This displayed persona of being lesser than is something that was quite familiar to me. I felt the same way during my college application process. You see, I'm a low-income, first-gen student, which means neither of my parents attended college, and I come from a low-income family. Now, some of you might say, who cares, or it's not that big of a deal, but it was to me. The two people who guided me through my whole life could have helped me find scholarships, grants, or how to even apply to college in the first place. This isn't a sob story, though, and I got help, and I found an abundance of resources for people just like me. And I thought to myself, who did this? Not many people just give away money. I stumbled across the Higher Education Act of 1965. In 1965, Lyndon Johnson signed into law a piece of legislation that defines low-income and first-generation students, with the purpose being to create a program of making grants and contracts to identify qualified individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds and to prepare them for post-secondary education. Now, this act has 12 pages of extremely useful information, but I'm going to focus on the importance this act had on low-income and first-gen students. Now, I can vouch that the help I've received has been extremely beneficial. I've applied for an array of resources exclusive to people like me, and I've applied for a multitude of scholarships exclusive to people like me. But by far, the largest and most impactful being FSU's CARE Summer Bridge Program. Now, I know many of you probably don't know what that is. So as the website reads, applicants selected to participate in the Summer Bridge Program will be first-generation college students from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds who have demonstrated a strong desire to succeed. And those selected, it pays for their college, housing, tuition, everything. And as he said, I was accepted into that. It's pretty cool. Excuse my lack of professionalism, but that's so cool. I found a resource that defines people like me and is exclusive to people like me. But that's not it. FSU's CARE program was founded in 1968, just 3 years after the Higher Education Act was signed into law. That's no coincidence. The Higher Education Act seemingly created a program that I would apply for 50 years down the road. Enough about me. How does the Higher Education Act affect America? In 1964, just 1 year before the Higher Education Act, less than 10% of people aged 25 and younger attended college. Today, that number has jumped to over 30%. This is a direct result of the Higher Education Act caring about and supporting all people and not just a select group or a select few. With all of this being said, I urge you all to not let fear, stress, or anxiety affect anything you do. Lyndon Johnson signed a piece of legislation that funneled millions of dollars into education when at the time, less than 15% of Americans attended college. He received ridicule and hate, but 50 years down the road, it's helping kids like me. If I let fear affect me, I wouldn't be up here right now because I am terrified. So in the famous words of Susan Jeffers, feel the fear and do it anyways.
When I first heard the prompt for this speech, I had a lot of trouble because I was like, there's so many written documents already in history, and it was a really tough decision, but I really thought, what kind of written document has impacted my life? And in the end, I chose the Analects. The Analects is a book that comprises of all of Confucius's teachings, his sayings, his philosophies. It was compiled by his disciples after his death, and I talk about it in my speech, and it basically focuses on the way people should live in order to ensure harmony within society. Some of my extracurricular activities include Battle of the Books, which is like a book club, but we have a competition in the end of the year. And another one I'm very involved in is my parents own a gas station, which I work at part-time, like after school I go there usually. And I'm also in Model United Nations, which I'm the president of, and I basically run meetings every week and we go to conferences and compete. If I had one story to tell like a best friend that really impacted my life, it would be the experience of studying abroad in China, which I do talk about in my speech, because it really has impacted the way I look at academics and the way I value hard work. And I think if I did not study abroad in first grade, I think I would be a totally different person than I am today.
And now our final speaker this evening is a track and field athlete and a classical pianist and a speaker tonight. Looking forward to hearing Mandy Guo from Pedro Menendez High School, everyone, the St. Johns County regional winner.
Before I reveal the written document that I've chosen for today's speech, I would like to take you all on a little time travel. Imagine yourself as a scholar who lived nearly 2,000 years ago in the capital of China during the golden age of the Han Dynasty. Today marks a monumental day for you and thousands of other scholars across the kingdom. It is a day of the National Civil Service Examination. To pass and achieve high marks on this exam would enable you to land a coveted role in the imperial bureaucracy and raise the status of your family from that of mere merchants to aristocrats. However, this exam is notoriously difficult, with a pass rate of merely 10%. So, for most of your life, you've been studying numerous subjects, such as writing, calligraphy, mathematics, poetry, and law. But, most importantly, in order to pass, you must be able to recite, word for word, the teachings of a man named Confucius, or Kongfuzi, who is revered as China's very first teacher and an unparalleled sage. After his death, his students compiled all of his teachings, philosophies, and sayings into one single book called the Analects. The 5 principles taught within the Analects are benevolence, ritual propriety, wisdom, loyalty, and trustworthiness. It focuses on the way people should live in order to ensure harmony within society, and has impacted all aspects of East Asian society in areas including the government and family relationships, and even the utensil with which people eat with. For example, chopsticks in Asia was not popular until the influence of Confucius's teachings. It is said in the Analects that Confucius equated the usage of knives with acts of violence and aggression, And as an alternative, he advocated the use of chopsticks, which is used by nearly 1/3 of the world's population today. In addition, the emperors of East Asian society had what the Analects called the mandate of heaven. This mandate gave an emperor his powers and an all-encompassing jurisdictional claim over the social political life of the people. In addition, the Analects had a line that goes, 君君臣臣父父子子. This phrase translates to, let the emperor behave as an emperor, let the magistrate behave as a magistrate, let the father behave as a father, and let the son behave as a son. These words take effect in all aspects of East Asian society, such as in corporate companies, in the government, and family life, where one's rank and age could determine the level of respect that you receive and the higher-ups whom you'd answer to. Lastly, my own experiences have contributed to my belief in the lasting influences of the Analects. You see, my parents are both Chinese immigrants. Yet, as a child growing up in the States, my knowledge of East Asian culture was extremely limited. Then, in first grade, my mother made a decision that would impact me for the rest of my life. She decided to send me to study abroad in China to learn Mandarin. There, I lived in the southern province of Fuzhou with many other students in a boarding school. Surprisingly, however, my greatest challenge upon studying in China was not the language barrier. Instead, it was adapting to the intense academic environment that was so drastically different from what I was used to in the States. In China, Confucian teachings have instilled immense respect for teachers. All students are required to stand and bow, 老师好, hello teacher, when a teacher enters the room, and 老师再见, goodbye teacher, when a teacher leaves the room. And because of the Analects' repeated emphasis on the importance of education, extreme academic pressure has been placed on children since primary school in China. For example, it was common for the teachers to call out the test results of all students, starting from those who scored the worst to those who scored the best, in front of the whole classroom. So now, even 11 years later, as I speak on this stage, I can recall the churning of my stomach as I hoped and prayed that I would not be one of the first names called. I remember attending late-night study sessions with the 40 other students in my class, finishing homework or doing practice math problems till my head hurt. All this happened under the watchful eye of a single teacher on duty who would stand in the front of the classroom and monitor everyone's progress. For summer break, we were given a 2-inch thick work booklet and expected to turn it in the beginning of the following year. Fun fact, I never finished this work booklet because I returned to the States. And boy, was I relieved. Overall, the teachings from the Analects have influenced all aspects of East Asian society in the areas mentioned earlier and beyond, with this influence dating all the way back to 500 BC. Therefore, I am merely a drop in the ocean of waves that have been rippled by the Analects.
My advice to anyone who's out there listening, whether or not you're a senior, wherever you are, if there's something that you think you might be interested in, take the chance. I am involved in speech and debate, and arguably here right now, because I saw an announcement freshman year about the National Shakespeare Competition, and I decided to stop by a random classroom with a teacher I'd never heard of before and try it and see if that was something I was interested in. And that led me into speech and debate, which has given me even more opportunities. It allowed me to have an internship at the Jimerson Bird Law Firm this last summer, and it's helped shape who I am right now. So if there's something out there an event, a club, a hobby that you think that you might be interested in. Life is short. Take the chance. And I think that taking that chance, you'll find it's much more rewarding than sitting back and reminiscing and regretting the fact that you never took the opportunity.
For those students interested in getting into oratory competition or speech and public speaking, I would say one of the most important things is learn to be confident when you're on stage, and maybe join debate club or some kind of extracurricular activity that would enable you to practice. And in the end, what's the most important is that you enjoy the process and you enjoy sharing ideas with the audience.
Well, I hope to go to college. My dream college would be the University of Florida, but in the future, if I do get into UF or any other colleges, I want to go there to study animal sciences and biology, and then from there go study at graduate school for veterinary medicine and hopefully become a veterinarian in my future.
So I remember in elementary school, I really loved singing, and when I got to middle school, I loved acting. So I really wanted to take a shot at musical theater. And I remember knowing all of the music stuff and studying really hard to get into that dance or practicing really hard in acting class. But it made me feel, I remember feeling inferior because most of my peers were a lot better at that stuff than I was. And eventually, coming to senior year, I learned that, you can only be so good at some things until you find something that you find is like a better fit for you. And my better fit, honestly, was being behind the scenes, writing the stuff, taking pictures and taking videos. I love to capture that beauty of everything around me, and it makes me feel more confident about myself and about everything that I do. And I do have theater to thank for that, but it was like a moment in my life where I realized I was proud of myself for moving on.
They were all terrific speakers, all five. I think they all deserve a final round of applause. Well done.
So we want to call all our award presenters to the stage, and we're going to announce the runner-up first, and then the winner, and then we will present the finalists with their scholarships, okay? So, presenting the runner-up scholarship will be Dean Scott of R. Dean Scott Architect.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dean Scott.
Thank you, Jack. It truly is a blessing to live in a place like Northeast Florida, to have been a Rotarian since 1998, and to have been a part of this awesome oratory competition since its inception. I'm pleased to announce tonight's runner-up, Sophia Grace Posick. A big lovely check. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So exciting.
And presenting our first place $5,000 scholarship is Yolanda Mallman Mills. Yolanda is the president of Woody's Barbecue. Remember, they were our caterer for tonight's event. I've known Yolanda for about 35 years, and she is just a wonderful asset to our community in many different ways. And Yolanda, take it away, please. Our winner of the 2022 Rotary's Oratory Competition is Nicholas Emerson.
You guys are so talented. Each and every one. Your parents as well for supporting you. Your teachers. The teachers give you, right? They really give you the backing to do this. So we're so proud of you. Thank you. We look forward to you for being the leaders of our future. Thank you. Yes. but we do have Richard for our closing remarks. Richard, please take it away.
Even though we only had one first-place winner this evening, Nicholas Emerson from Yulee High School, the Nassau County Regional winner, I want all of our contestants to know that every one of you are winners tonight. I thank you for taking us on this academic challenge, and we wish you the best for your futures. I would like to thank the Oratory Committee of South Jacksonville Rotary Club for the imagination, inspiration, and effort that they put into making this evening possible. I also want to thank everyone attending and hope that you had a great evening. And finally, I'd like to thank WJCT-TV for once again broadcasting this event. We'll end the evening with our Rotary motto, one profits most, who serves best. Thank you and good night.
Generous support for this program has been provided by these sponsors: